If you can't make money in your group practice, you shouldn't have a group practice. You need money to have peace of mind, pay for your kids' college, take vacations, and just have a good life. And so that's why today I'm going to be breaking down 4 areas of your business that you can improve to increase profitability and really just build a better business. Now, this is all put together in a playbook you can find in the bio. It's what I use with my clients to help them make their business better. All right, so let's get into the iPad. Let me break this down. So increasing profitability in your group practice. There are 4 areas that we focus on to do so. First is going to be your gross profit per session. Second is going to be owner sessions. So if you're seeing your own clients, how do we optimize that? 3 is going to be expenses. And 4 is going to be clinical sessions. So non-owner sessions, how do we optimize that as well? All right, number 1 is the most important one in your entire business. This is your gross profit per session. And if you don't know what that is, this is essentially your cut, your split, the amount that you get when a clinician bills out. The reason this is the most important number in your business is this is your margin. If you don't know much about business, your margin really constitutes everything in your business. It will tell you how easy it is for you to hire other people, to pay for marketing, to have profit left over at the end of the month. And if you feel squeezed right now, I can tell you there's a very high chance that this number is not in line. Or if you're just really early on, you don't have any sessions, it's a different problem. Most of the more experienced group practice owners that still struggle, it comes down to this, okay? I like to measure your gross profit a couple of different ways in order to kind of make this thing better. What I'll do is I'll take red, yellow, and green to measure out what your gross profit per session is. And I'm looking at the actual dollar amount that you get, okay? It's because 50% of $50 is a heck of a lot less than 25% of $300, okay? So I don't really care what your percentage split is, except for the extent that it affects the dollar amount per session. So here it is for group practices. Less than 50 is in the red. I want to try to get that up for sure. Between 50 to 75 is going to be in the yellow. We can operate pretty good businesses off of this. If we can go from 50 to 60, it makes a massive difference. And greater than 75 is the best. I've worked with a lot of group practice owners doing $3 million a year, $5 million a year, $10 million per year, and they all have high gross profit margins. Whether they're on insurance, a lot of times they're cash pay practices, but they find ways to generate a lot for each session that their clinicians have. That allows them to spend a lot on marketing and really, make the best possible investments in their clinicians because they have money left over at the end of the month. I can tell you the difference between $75 a session and $45 per session is a way smaller business, way less profit margins at the end of the month. It really all comes down to this number. Okay. Again, to illustrate the point a little bit, if you can make an additional $10 per session, and let's say you do 500 sessions in a month across all your clinicians, that's $5,000 a month in profit that you add to the business by that $10 jump, right? If it goes 15, it's $7,500 at higher scales. And I work with, again, a lot of these bigger group practices, $60,000 a year in profit on the same work makes a massive, massive difference. It all comes down to your margin. Okay, so what can you do if you want to increase your gross profit per session? A couple of things. One is you can just increase the rates of the practice overall. If you want to get an extra $10 a session, if you bump the price by 20 and you pay your clinician an extra 10, you get an extra 10, it makes all the difference in the world to that margin. And for your clients, a lot of times 165 versus 185 is not a massive difference. So that's a lot of times where we're going to start. As well, the thing I really recommend for clinicians is to pay a flat rate. And what I mean by this is to pay a dollar amount per session. Most of the time, versus paying people a percentage, I prefer to say, hey, the market's paying people $65 a session. I want to pay them $75 a session, right? Now, maybe I'm going to charge $175 or something, but they're still getting paid more than other places. But I'm also trying to prevent the clinicians coming to me later on and saying, well, my friend over there they get 60% of their session, even though they're on insurance and it's a completely different business model. When we have a flat rate, people a lot of times, they know what they're going to get. There's a lot more simplicity for them. You can create the earnings projections a lot better, and you can bake in your margin at the front. So I really, really highly recommend paying a flat rate in order to increase your gross profit margin. And one other thing, let's say, is interns. So I've seen different examples where group practice owners will take on interns who are still in grad school, can see about 10 sessions a week, but they're able to get $80, $90, $100 per session because they don't pay the interns anything, right? They're getting experience, but you're having a profit center for your business, okay? This is the cheat code really to how do we increase profitability in a business, especially at the bigger scales, is focusing on increasing this number, tracking this number, and making it better. All right, moving on to number 2, and this is owner sessions. This, a lot of times, especially under $1 million per year, you're likely going to be seeing your own clients. You're going to have a caseload of 10, 15, 20, sometimes 25 a week or more while you're running the business. Now, the good thing about this is that you're going to get the highest gross profit per session. If you charge $200 a session, you're collecting all that $200 versus if it's $50 a session and you have to have 4 other sessions for other therapists. The bad news is you can only see so many sessions in the week and you still have to run the business. Okay, so a lot of the time I'm asking clients that I work with to increase their rate per session. And this is really it. You are the most important person in the business. You should also be the highest paid person in the business. Now, that doesn't always happen. But when you're doing an owner session, you're taking away an hour that you could have put towards working on the business, which is really your role. And so if we're going to do that, we need to be compensated appropriately so that it's worth it for you to do. It's going to depend on where your business is at. For some people, that means $100 a session is great. For some people, it's $200 a session or $175. And whether you're on some insurance panels or you're just cash, there's a lot of ways that we can optimize this, right? We can get onto only the highest paying panels, or we can bump our top rate, or we can bump what couples are paying when they work with us, and we can focus on specific types of populations. What this is going to do is really just meet you on your supply and demand curve, okay? So this is your supply and demand curve. A lot of times we're priced down here when we need to be priced up here. Maybe see a little bit less, but bump our price so we're either making the same amount or more, but we free up 5 hours a week. That's one of the easiest things you can do. The hard part about it for a lot of clinicians is they have, really strong relationships with their clients. They don't want to rock the boat. But you need to change in order to change. Look at this as well. $25 per session. If you're doing 20 sessions a week, it's equal to $500. So if you bump your average rate per session, again, whether that's insurance or cash, you get an extra $25 per session. You're going to get an extra $2,000 per month. Okay. And this is not about necessarily working less, although you could choose to say, I'm going to see a couple less people per week and make an extra $1,000 a month or whatever. It's really about, if you're going to be doing this, we want to increase your earnings per hour. This is also one of the most important entrepreneurial principles, is that for every hour of work, you want it to be the highest leverage, highest revenue driven action you can take. And seeing one-to-one sessions can be very impactful, but it can be more impactful if we can increase your rate, right? And if you increase your rate to the extent that a lot of people don't want to work with you, great, because then they can work with the other clinicians in the practice, right? And you do not cap your time. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients, if they're under 500K, 750K per year, they don't have a ton of profit, sometimes coming from their clinicians. We're really focusing on helping them improve their caseload to the extent that they make more, work less, and can start to devote more time to working on the business. So owner sessions, number 2 most important thing that you can do. All right, let's move on to number 3, which is going to be expenses. This is pretty simple. Profit is equal to revenue minus expenses. Okay. If we can take expenses from $10,000 a month to $8,000 a month, we also add $2,000 a month in profit. I do not spend that much time on expenses often, partly because I can look at a P&L and I can cut things within a couple seconds. Additionally, there's usually less that we can get from deleting expenses than we can from improving the business model. Okay, and the business model, it comes from that margin, it comes from pricing. That's really our highest lever. But with expenses, we can get really clear on expense categories by size of your business, and then we can optimize it accordingly. Okay, you don't really need tons of software if you're under $500,000 a year. You don't really need a CRM until you approach $1 million per year or more. Okay, so a lot of software becomes more important when you get to higher stages. But if you're at lower stages, You should put some money into marketing. You can put some money into admin support once you get to maybe 4 to 5 therapists. But a lot of times you just need to optimize your time so that you can work on the things that are important. Okay, but here as well, if we can delete, $500, $1,000 a month from your group practice, that goes right to the bottom line, or it can be reinvested in other areas of the business. And so looking at your expenses, the thing that I would really recommend doing is saying, does this make me more money? Does this help us see more sessions or help us get new clients in the door? If the answer is not clear and you can't really find an answer, that might be something to cut. Okay, we just really want to focus on what are the things that are going to help us grow? What are the things that are going to help us maintain and provide a great service for clients? Everything else is somewhat wasteful. Okay, so that's expenses. All right, moving on to number 4. This is the one that's oftentimes the most obvious to people, which is optimizing sessions. Okay. Now there's 2 ways to do this. Let's do A is through marketing, acquisition. Okay. And this is often what we think about. Get more clinicians, fill up their caseloads, whatever our gross profit per session is, we're going to make more, right? I will say the reality of this is it breaks down if you have lower gross profit per session. It's way easier if you have higher gross profit per session. So this really goes into a math equation, LTGP to CAC, which is how much money do you actually make whenever a new client comes into the practice? Let's say you make $500 from all of your splits and the average length that someone stays. And how much does it cost you to get a new client, right? And if that's paid ads or that's paying someone to go market on your behalf to get new clients, or it's you spending your hours, how much does that require of you? If we have a good equation here, we can grow really quickly. We can double down on ad spend. We can double down on organic marketing. We can increase the inputs to get higher outputs. And that is one of the best ways to make big profits in business, right? You can't really do it on 100 sessions a month, even if you have really good gross profit per session. Now, you can get to a good place, but it's really, if you want to get to $1 million a year or multi-million dollars per year, you need to have acquisition channels, marketing channels that are going to scale you. Okay. So that's the number 1 thing about optimizing sessions. The second is going to be retention. And every big group practice that I work with really talks about this a lot, really focuses on this and has great systems for this, right? Whether they have supervisors that are amazing or clinical directors who manage them or playbooks that help their clinicians to understand, how do you start a session? How do you schedule the next session? What are the important parts of their own growth and their own journey that they can work towards? They are setting up custom coaching for each clinician in the practice to help them improve, and they're comparing that to data. We like to recommend a software called Practice Vital to a lot of our clients, which is going to help show utilization and cancellation rate and all of these metrics that are going to vary a lot clinician to clinician. So one of the ways that you can just directly add more profit to the business is you can help to optimize your clinician's behavior, ability, skill sets towards better outcomes for clients and for retention. So we want to say, let's say, track and coach. And if you can do this consistently, you can add tons and tons of money to the practice, right? It's not necessarily just about adding new clients in. It's about keeping them and keeping them happy. This also starts a lot in how you hire people. Some of the best group practice owners I know will run personality tests on the hiring because they know how that factors into retention too, and people wanting to come back to see the therapist. There's a lot of secret sauce to each one of these pieces, but these are the areas that you can move in your practice to increase your profitability. Okay. Again, we've got your gross profit per session. That is the number 1 magic number. If you're under 50, think about ways you can increase that, right? Whether increasing your top line, you can pay your clinicians less, you can get off some panels that are not very good. There's a lot of ways that you can be creative about this and still pay your clinicians really well. Increasing your session rate, if you do your own sessions, something I highly recommend. And it's scary, but man, is life better once you get it done. And a lot of clients, if they're going to go from weekly to bi-weekly that you've been with for a long time, sometimes that's fine, okay? But a lot of times I see income goes up workload goes down, creates more time to work on the business rather than in the business. Expenses, just something you want to monitor. If they're way out of control and you have no idea why you're not making money, a lot of times you're spending too much, especially if you're above 10, 15 grand a month. But going to be less of a lever I'm going to pull than trying to get more clients, get them worth more, paying more. And that's the fourth one, which is optimizing your sessions. We can do that through marketing. That's really what you need to do, build marketing systems. But also, especially as you get towards that 7-figure mark, working on retention and your clinical skill sets, so key, so important. Okay, so with all of that, I hope you enjoyed kind of this breakdown. There is this playbook in the description if you want to grab that. And as well, if you want to see the full plan that we use with group practice owners to help them scale up to $1 million per year, there's going to be a link for that in the description as well. So check that out.